Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the iFitModel podcast. I am your host, Aaron Zambrano of iFitModel. Now, this is the launch of my new series, How to Overcome Failure. And it's a 4-episode series that really shows you how to master the process of overcoming failure. You know, we're all going to experience failure in our lives, but it's really how we deal with that type of adversity that defines us. So in this series, what I want to do is I want to take you through the 4-phase process of overcoming failure and mastering the process and becoming successful. So let's start the show. Well, you know, when most people fail at something, what they normally do is they go back and they look at what it was that made them fail. You know, so maybe it's they lost motivation. Maybe that's what the problem was. And so what they do is they go out and try to find something that will motivate them. Maybe it's a book, maybe it's a podcast, or maybe it's a meme on Facebook that really helps motivate them to keep going. But most of the time, it's usually a deeper issue. So recently, I was having some problems with my shoulder. And so I decided to call my massage therapist and set an appointment up. So I went ahead and went in, and she's like, okay, what are we doing today? And I was like, you know, my shoulder is hurting, and it's been giving me problems for the last couple weeks, you know, and actually it's been giving me problems for about a month now, and it's really getting to a point where it's hard to do anything. She said, okay, well, you know, lay on the table and, you know, do what you do. So I got on the table, and for the first 15 minutes, all she's doing is massaging my back. She's massaging my back. She tells me to flip over. She massages my chest. And finally, I stop, and I was like, hey, you know, I told you my problem was the shoulder. Why? You haven't even touched my shoulder yet. What? You know, why are you, my problem is my shoulder, not my back and not my chest. And she's like, no, Aaron, the problem is not your shoulder. The problem is actually something deeper than that. She's like, your back muscles and your chest muscles are extremely tight. And what's happening is that's pulling on your shoulder, and you're feeling pain in your shoulder. So your problem isn't your shoulder. Your problem is your chest and your back muscles are too tight. So you got to make sure that you stretch it out and you do this and you do that. And she gave me this whole list of things. And sure enough, I did it right after I was done with that massage therapy session. My shoulder wasn't hurting anymore. And then I did the things that she told me to do, and it cured the problem. So this is the same thing that goes on whenever you fail at a program or you failed in the past about anything. Sometimes it's not really the things that you think you failed. That's usually not your problem. It's usually something that's deeper than that. So that's going to bring us to our first phase in overcoming failure. And it's called back to the beginning. So anytime that I have somebody that comes in to my office and says, hey, look, I want to work out, typically they have already tried a program and they have already failed. I mean, exercise has been around since the 80s, you know, with your Jane Fonda years, your leg warmers, your headbands, you know, that whole thing, you know. So exercise has been around for a long time. So if you're in your 30s, your 40s, even your 50s, you've exercised before and you've tried a program, and chances are you probably have failed at some point, which is why you're kind of in my office. So the first thing that I do is I don't ask them, why did you fail? I actually go all the way back to the beginning, and I start all the way over, and I start from scratch, because I don't want to do anything that they've done in the past, because those types of things that they did in the past caused them to fail, or may have been the cause for them to fail. So I want to start off with a clean slate. So the first thing I have to do is I have to figure out what their goals are. But before I could even do that, I've got to figure out where they are. So when somebody walks into my office, I say, okay, you know, before we even get to talking, let's first see where you are, what your baseline measurements are. It's kind of like when you go into a mall. You know, if you've never been to the mall before and you've never been to that particular mall, the first thing that you want to do is you want to find the directory and you want to find that star that says you are here. Once you find that star that you are here, then you can determine what your goals are in regards to what store you want to go visit. So maybe you want to go visit the Apple store, okay? Well, we'll get to that here in just a second. So you got to find that star, just like I have to find where somebody is, you know. So I have to know what their baseline measurements are. I have to know their weight, their body fat, their blood pressure, whatever pertains to their goals, I've got to find those initial baseline measurements. So now that I do that, then I have to ask them what their goals are. So now we know where the star is, and now we got to figure out what store they're trying to go to. So I ask them what their goals are. And a lot of times I have people that just tell me things like, "Oh, I just want to lose weight and tone up." Well, that's not a very good way of setting goals. You can't just say, "I want to lose weight and tone up." I have a lot of people say, I just want to be fit." Well, I don't know what that means. So we've got to define it. We've got to figure out a way to create goals that are actually SMART goals. And there actually is a thing called SMART goals. The SMART stands for specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. So you've got to have goals that are specific and measurable at the same time. So if you want to lose weight, how much weight are you trying to lose? You want to lose 50 pounds. You already know where you are. So if you're 200 pounds and you want to get down to 150 pounds, then you want to lose 50 pounds. You got to be specific like that. You've got to be able to measure it, because you don't want to set goals that you can't measure, because how do you know if you're successful or not? So you got to make goals that are specific and measurable. If you want to be fit, if that's what you say, "Oh, I just want to be fit," then you have to define what fit means. And if you want to be able to run a 10K and that defines what you feel is fit, then that's measurable. You can actually do that, and that's a great way to set your goals. But also, with setting goals, you got to make sure that they're realistic and they're attainable. I've had so many people who have watched these TV shows, so many people who have, seen these signs on the side of the road. It's like, lose 30 pounds in 30 days. Look, that is not realistic at all. The only way I've seen anybody lose 30 pounds in 30 days is, they caught a bad case of the bird flu, or they ate the wrong Mexican restaurant one night, So you got to be realistic. Your goals have to be realistic and attainable, So I normally don't like to tell people to put a timeline on their goals. Yes, you need to set, benchmarks. Yeah, you need to say, in a month I want to be here, in a month I want to be here, but you also need to be realistic. Typically what happens is when I have a client that comes in, I normally don't say, "Okay, in a month you're going to be able to lose 20 pounds or 15 pounds or whatever," because there's so many factors that go into really losing that fat or losing that body fat. There's so many things that go involved in that. So what I like to do is I like to actually monitor somebody over a month. So after they followed my program for a month, then at that point I can see how their body is truly going to respond from that type of training. And then at that point, I can start to estimate about how much they're going to lose on a monthly basis and how quickly they can get to their goals. Okay. Now, at the very beginning, obviously I can't wait a month to give people an idea of how long it's going to take for them to see results. So at the very beginning, when somebody says, how long does it, is it going to take me to lose these 30 pounds that I want to get to? Healthy weight loss is 1 to 2 pounds a week. So you have to kind of think of it in that way. So 1 to 2 pounds a week is considered healthy weight loss. So at the minimum, if you're trying to lose 30 pounds, then at the minimum, it's going to take you about 15 weeks, roughly about 4 months. So it'll take you about 4 months to lose 30 pounds, and that's really about the average timeline that it takes for people to see true and permanent results, because you can do it the wrong way. You can, starve yourself. You can eat lettuce and water every day, and that's all you ever do. You can, follow whatever fad diet you want for a month and lose tremendous amounts of weight in 1 month. But is that something that you can really maintain? Is that something that you can really do over a long period of time? So healthy weight loss is really about doing it and being able to have that longevity to continue to do it time after time after time after time. So I have to ask them what their goals are, and then I kind of give them their expectations. And so when a lot of times what happens is when people hear that it's going to take 4 months to see the results that they want to get, they usually get discouraged, extremely discouraged. And a lot of times people quit before they ever get started. 1 of 2 things happens when I tell people how long it's going to take for them to see the results. Either they're going to accept it and start working on it and just get right after it, or they're going to feel so bad and so discouraged and feel like they'll never be able to do it that they quit before they ever get started. So this is actually going to lead to my next thing that I ask. So the first thing I do when they come in is I ask them what their goals are. I see where they are, and now we have an idea of where we need to go. But the next thing that I ask them is, about their determination. Now, this is an extremely important piece of the entire process. If you got discouraged by hearing that it's going to take you 4 months to lose 30 pounds, if you got discouraged from that and it actually discouraged you from ever getting started, then are you really determined to lose that 30 pounds? If something goes wrong and not according to plan, are you really going to stop working towards your goals? Because if you are, you're not very determined. You've got to be determined in order to see the results that you want. It's really that simple. And without determination, you can't accomplish the goals that you want to accomplish. So let's just talk about what determination is for a second, okay? Now, Webster defines it. Webster is always hard to read. Not really, but it's kind of words that are put together. But Webster defines it as the act of deciding definitely and firmly. Okay, so you have definitely decided and you're firm on it, and that's what you're going to do. There's no way around it. You're going to accomplish what you want to accomplish because you decided definitely and firmly. That's determination. Well, I like to kind of put it in layman's terms. So I like to say it how I want to say it. So the way I see determination is anything you're willing to continue to do and make happen regardless of your circumstances or what occurs in your life. So basically, if you're willing to run through walls to make your goals a reality, then that's how you know you're determined. Determination, you will do anything at all to make those goals come true. Now, and this is a big thing. So this is a big statement that I'm about to say. So when what you're determined about aligns with your goals, then you're set to make permanent changes. Okay? Think about that for a second. When what you're determined about aligns with your goals, then you're set to make true and permanent changes. That is a very, very important thing to think about, because if you're not determined in something and your goal is something else, you're not going to see the results that you want. Your goals and your determination have to be in line with each other, and that's the way that you're going to change. So a lot of times, if people aren't determined, if people, after I have that talk with them, if they're not determined, then I say, you know what? You got to learn to find that determination. You got to come back to me when you're determined. I can help you become determined, but really you're going to have to help yourself. You're going to have to find that, because everybody wants to see results. Everybody tells me all the time, I want to lose weight and I want to tone up, but a lot of times they're not willing to run through walls to make it happen. The circumstances almost have to be extremely ideal for them to see results. The other day I was meeting with somebody, and I had a lady come in, and she's like, I want to, lose weight, tone up, the whole thing. We went through the whole process. And so we got to this part, and I was like, okay, it's time to get set up with your program. She's like, well, I can't sign up yet, and it's because I have a vacation in a couple weeks, and then after 2 weeks after that, after I get back, my sister has a wedding in Cabo, and then a month later, my kids I'm getting them ready for school, and and it's just gonna be really crazy, so I just really can't start. I'm like, are you serious? Like, that's really a thing. Like, your conditions have to be super ideal. Everything has to be perfect in your life in order for you to start a program. Guys, get this through your head. Life will never be perfect for you to work out. Life will never be perfect for you to do the things that you want to do. Life is not perfect. You will not have a perfect set of circumstances that allows you to do everything that you want. You don't have a clear path, a yellow brick road all the way to Oz. You don't have that. You're going to have a bumpy ride. You're going to have dirt roads. You're going to have twists and turns. You're going to have all kinds of stuff. But it's your ability to continue to move forward when things aren't perfect. It's your ability to move forward when your circumstances are crazy. That's the way it is. Get out of the fantasy world and accept it that your life is going to be crazy all the time. You just have to figure out a way to continue to be determined and continue to move forward with your goals and continue to move forward with reaching your goals. So now that you've kind of understood that you're determined and you've gone through that thing, and that's what I do. Once somebody really says, you know what, Aaron, I hear you. I understand what you're saying. I am determined to see these goals. I am determined to run through walls. I am determined to do whatever it takes to make this a reality. And those are the words that I like to hear. When somebody can really go deep down into their emotional state and say, this is something I really want. I have so many people who come into my office and cry during our evaluation or during our assessments because I really am able to get down into their emotions and what really got them there and what they really want to do. And it's an emotional thing. And it is a very emotional thing. If you've tried and you failed over and over and over and over again, and you're just tired of failing, it is an emotional process to get all that stuff out. So you've got to figure it out. You've got to get it out, and you've got to be determined to make your goal happen. So now that I've gone through this with these people and seen where they are, check their goals, and realize that they're determined. More importantly, they realize they're important. I asked these 3 final questions. Now, this is more to a thing that I do to kind of put a timestamp, to a time capsule, so to speak, to really identify where they are, kind of how they started, and where they want to go. So I ask these questions, and this is really homework that I give them, and it's due a week after we meet. And it's a really important thing to do, and I don't want people to skip out on this. So I ask people 3 questions, and I'm going to ask you these 3 questions so you can do at home yourself. The first thing I ask is, what happened? What happened in your life that made you want to come into my office? What thing bothered you? What pain did you experience in order for you to click in your head to say, you know what? I need to go see Aaron, or I need to change my life through health and fitness. I need to do this. Tony Robbins says all the time that the first step in creating change is you first must be disturbed. And so a lot of times when people, are disturbed about something, they'll go off and change. You know how many people I know that have had heart attacks and have almost died, massive heart attacks, and have almost died, and then that's when they decide to quit smoking, or that's when they decide to start exercising and doing those things. And everybody says, well, why didn't they do it all before? Well, everybody does that. A lot of times we don't make a move and we don't change until we're disturbed about something. So what is it that you're disturbed about that led you to this point? Why are you here? What clicked and made you want to start changing right now? So write that down and be as thorough as possible. You have to explain every single detail of it. And what we want to do here is really try to identify the emotional state that you were at. So you can always go back and read it. You can always go back and see why you got there and see where you were, so you never want to go back to that place again. And so write all that stuff down. Take your time. If it takes you 3 days to write the answer to this one question, then it takes you 3 days, okay? The second question that I ask is write down and be very descriptive and be as detailed as possible. Paint the picture, so to speak, on what your life will be like when you accomplish your goals. What is your weight going to be? What size clothes are you going to wear? What things will you be doing? Will you be, traveling? Will you be hiking in the mountains or whitewater rafting? How will you feel about yourself? What would your confidence level be like? What are the types of things that you'll be able to do now that you have this newfound confidence, if you have it? So what would your life be like if you accomplish the goals that you want to accomplish? Okay. So the reason why I like to ask that, because it allows you to envision where you want to go. And if you can see it, you're more likely to make that happen. That's why they say always write down your goals, because if you can write down your goals on paper, you're more likely to be successful than if you just think about them in your head. So write these things down. Write down what your life will be like when you accomplish your goals. Okay, not if, but when you accomplish your goals. Okay, so get that down. That's question number 2. Question number 3. Now, this is the one that a lot of times is most of the time is the most important one, and a lot of times the one that really causes people to move. Question number 3 is, how will your life be if you don't accomplish your goals? How will you feel? Will you be worse then than you are now? How will your life be if you don't accomplish your goals? I said it before that, being disturbed is what causes us to change. Feeling that pain is what causes us to change. So if you can build these 2 scenarios, scenario number 1 is, that you accomplish the goals and you're living this life that you set out to do and you've accomplished everything you wanted to do. Or scenario number 2, your life is in shambles and you're not where you want to be and you feel bad about yourself and you're back to where you were when you first started. You feel terrible about yourself or whatever the case may be. Whatever your answer is in number 1 is usually going to be really close to what your life can be like if you don't accomplish your goals. Okay, so recently I was with a friend of mine, and she has a 5-year-old son, and we were at the park, and we had a big a friend get together, and there was a park out there, and she brought her son, and we were sitting there playing, and or sitting there watching the kids play and doing the things that they want to do or whatnot. And he comes over and he's like, "Hey, I want to play," and we're like, "Okay, we'll go out there and go make friends and go play with the kids." And he's like, "No, I want you guys to come with us." And so what I had to do is I had to build 2 scenarios for this child. I said, "Okay, look, if this is what you can do. You have 2 choices. You can go out there and make friends and have a really good time and play with all the kids, or you can sit here and be sad." And that's basically what question number 2 and question number 3 are, is you are building those 2 scenarios. When you're a child, you don't have that thought process. So sometimes you need the parent to be able to say, okay, scenario number 1 is if you do these things, this is what you're going to get. Scenario number 2 is if you do these things, this is what you're going to get. And you allow that child to make that choice. Well, this is kind of like you being a parent to yourself. You are writing down scenario number 1. What's going to happen when I accomplish my goals? How is my life going to be when I accomplish my goals? Question number 3 is, what is my life going to be like if I don't accomplish my goals? So now you've built these 2 scenarios, and now you can make those decisions. When you go through this exercise and you go through this process, you'll see that this is a really important piece, an important step. We're going to go back to it later on down the road, and you'll see this in the different series or the different phases that we'll go through in overcoming failure. But we'll eventually come back to this. But this is an important piece that you should not leave out. So now that you know your 2 scenarios, hopefully you'll pick the right one, and you'll pick the direction that you want to go in. And most people, once they go through this exercise, they can visually see where they want to go, and they go out and make it happen because they know they're determined. They got the right set of goals. They've done attainable goals, they measurable goals, and they've got all that stuff. So they find their inner beast, so to speak, to really go out and make it happen, and they're ready to change because they never want to be at the place they are right now. So this is the first step in overcoming failure. Start back at the beginning again. Figure out what your goals really are, where you're starting, where you're trying to go, and really determine, do you have that determination? Do you have that determination to make your goals a reality? And then the last step of this particular phase is to create that time step, create that time capsule and that marker for the future by asking those 3 simple questions to yourself. And all of these are extremely crucial components of overcoming failure, and this is just the first phase. We got 3 more phases coming up, and I cannot be more excited to share these phases with you. Make sure you tune in next week where we go into our 2nd episode of the series, Plan of Action. It's the second phase of overcoming failure and mastering the process to seeing permanent results. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been an absolute incredible show. Don't forget to follow me on Facebook at iFitModel, or go to my website at iFitModel.com. You can also send me an email with any of the questions that you have at info@iFitModel. It's been an absolute fantastic show. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week.